another blow to President Biden because of the blows Biden and the White House have landed on all Americans. A new Fox News poll shows that only 40% of voters say they approve of the job that he's doing. They disapprove of his handling on just about everything. Inflation, most of all. The same poll finds that 84% of Americans say the Biden economy is in fair or poor condition, compared to 17% who think it's excellent or good. That is the lowest number in nearly a decade. 52% believe it's only going to get worse next year. Joining the conversation all morning long, founding partner of Macro Trends Advisors, visiting research fellow at the University of San Diego School of Business, co-host of the NOPO podcast, Mitch Roschelle, and former Trump and George W. Bush State Department senior advisor, Christian Whiton. Christian, to you first on this. What do you make of this poll? Not surprising, because Americans are, I would curse, but it's 6:03 in the morning.
Right. Well, Dagen, it's terrible news for the president, and he's actually in the worst condition in the part of the poll that's most important for midterm elections and for the reelect. He's at 68% disapproval. I didn't know you could get that high disapproval rating on the economy, but that's where he is. But everything across the board, crime, the border, Ukraine, Russia, etc., he's underwater. What this tells us is that the White House talking points trying to blame inflation, not where that blame truly lies, which is on the drunken sailor spending by Washington and money printing by the Federal Reserve, but trying to blame it on Vladimir Putin, really trying to blame all of his problems on Vladimir Putin. Just not good for the president. You know, presidents often get a little bit of a bump from foreign travel, but as you pointed out, he just came back from the Middle East. He went hat in hand to Saudi Arabia and came back with nothing, not a bubkiss, and also lied about it. Said he got them to agree to more oil. They didn't, and said he raised the human rights issue about a murdered U.S. green card holder, Khashoggi, the journalist, and the Saudis are disputing that he raised that too. So just every day seems to be a bad day for Joe Biden.
Mitch, what do you make of these polls? I'm going through them. Christian noted that 68% disapprove of his handling on the economy, 73% on inflation. And so the game of blame that this administration has been trying to play isn't working, because people know why we have runaway inflation. It's because of Biden's spending agenda, which we'll get to it as the show moves on. Bernie Sanders is very upset, very angry that they can't spend more money on their climate agenda. But also, I pointed to the Federal Reserve and the reckless monetary policy, which Biden also owns, because he reappointed Jay Powell as the chief of the Fed. And even politically, he could have used that and said, I'm getting rid of Jay Powell. I'm appointing my own individual to run the Fed. Didn't even do that. But what do you make of these polls? You know,
I just got back driving from Florida to New York, and there's no better way to get a feel for how Americans feel than to stop at gas stations up and down the East Coast. When I'm not buying beef jerky in gas stations, I'm actually talking to folks. And everybody is upset. Everybody is upset about inflation. Even though the price of fuel has come down, they're upset about inflation. It's insidious. But the problem is Putin's not in the news cycle anymore. The war in Ukraine's not in the news cycle. And what is inflation. And it doesn't seem like there's anybody doing anything about it. And I think that's the biggest reason. It's because it's run away, it's out of control, and it doesn't seem like there's a plan that everyday Americans can understand.
And I would just note what Kevin Hassett told Maria, was on this show last week, the former chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors. And Christian, I'll give you the final word on this really quickly. Inflation for everyday items over the last 2 months, these are necessities, things people need to buy, is running at an annualized rate of 32%. Hassett said a, quote, very treacherous time in the American economy, and he even thinks the Federal Reserve will have to hike between meetings. That's what all Americans are facing.
Right, and people realize this. People who don't really spend their day thinking about GDP or whether we have too many dollars chasing too few goods or whether aggregate supply is going to shift left or right, they go to the grocery store, they go to the gas station, and they understand that their buying power and their savings are being eroded. And it's interesting to me that most people think we're going in the wrong direction. I think we are too. There's going to be a little bit of relief on gas prices. Joe Biden has brought the price of oil down to about $100 a barrel the old-fashioned way by instigating a recession. We won't get news of that for certain until July 28th, when GDP for the second quarter is reported. But it's just, again, nothing really bright out there for the Democrats or Biden in this news.
American workers suffering the largest decline, largest reduction in real wages since the 1970s. So Jimmy Carter's expecting a ring-a-ding-ding because he knows that he'd do a better job than Biden is at this point. May God bless Jimmy Carter.